Okay, today I want to make Maroger Medium, but I want to speak to you first of all about the oil and the Turps, which are two of the most important ingredients in this. The oil, I'm using cold pressed linseed oil. You want to use cold pressed because it hasn't been processed, it's in the virgin state. I recommend cleaning it, and that's getting the litharge out of the oil. That is what contaminates your oil paint and turns it yellow. As well as the color of the oil, you'll see that this is amber. This is not the best oil to use. You want to use a Clarified, which has been clarified by sunlight. Sunlight, if you put it in the sunlight for about 30 days, it will bleach the oil and make it clear. If it's not completely washed out and cleaned purely, it will not bleach. We call this process bleaching. Paintings turn yellow due to the oil. This Chelsea linseed oil is a beautiful bleached oil that's been clarified. I highly recommend it. It's at Jerry's Artorama. Even though it is a little bit pricey. 100% pure. You want pure and 100% pure gum spirits. This is kind of a mediocre grade. It's got a little bit of petroleum product in it. It is pure, but it's not 100% pure. What we want to do is to pre-measure our ingredients, so we want about 2.5 ounces of gum. We want to tare the scale, and I want to get 2.5 ounces of pure gum mastic. Okay, we got 1.5 ounce. There's 2 ounces, 12. To 2.5, I'm sorry. 5 ounces of cold pressed linseed oil. Oops. 490. 497, 5. There's our oil. 1/4 ounce of litharge. Tare the scale. And this is lead, so you want to use caution with the lead. Perhaps use safety gloves. So we want 0.25 ounces. 0.25 exactly. So what I want to do is put the litharge on the table. Now let's go ahead and measure out the turpentine. We want 5 ounces of turpentine. Oil bit. Okay. Now, what I like to do, my personal choice, is to get this somewhat refined before adding it to the mixture. So I add a little bit of oil from our pre-measured amount. And then start mixing the oil in with the palette knife. Now this is pretty gritty, so I'm going to go ahead and use a muller. Be sure it's cleaned off nicely. I'm going to mold this on my glass palette until I get all those little chunks reduced into a fine paste. This just makes the cooking process a lot quicker. To the again, it's a better idea of price for things. So as well. That's mowing out quite nicely, getting it to grit. It's about the consistency of a salt. Tear the scale. Okay. And we want 0.25. That's 0.25 right there. That's a little bit more because we're going to lose. So now we've got turpentine pre-measured, our gum pre-measured, and our oil pre-measured, and our litharge. Those are the 4 things. I prefer cooking in a flask because there's less chance of open area creating a flame or something spilling over, catching the hot plate and catching on fire. If you do have a fire, don't panic. Just put a piece of wood or something over the lid, starve it of oxygen. The reason why you should cook outdoors is I was cooking this indoors once and it did catch on fire, and it took about 2 seconds for the entire room to be so black I could not see my hand in front of my face. So I use a flask. This is a little flask. You probably want to have a bit of a funnel for that. So we're going to take it down and we're going to cook it. The trick to cooking this first is cook the ingredients separately. You do not cook it with turps. Let me warn you, do not cook it with turps. Turps is explosive. You add the turpentine after you've done your cooking. So the first thing you add is the oil. Then you add your litharge until it is, and cook it until it is dissolved. Then you add your gum mastic and cook it until it's dissolved. You can also take this and stir it and keep it going. You don't want things sticking to the bottom of the container. Always wear gloves. Wear as much protection as you think you need. Keep gloves, mitts, things like that around, but do not cook it indoors. Okay, I just turned this on and I'm cleaning it. I see there's wax and moisture. Hey, it's a good idea to keep things clean. Now, keep in mind I'm working with a hot plate. Don't want to burn. I don't want my gloves to get dirty either. But there's some moist type of material down there you gotta get rid of. This is all potential for a fire. These gloves have holes in them. That's only an injury waiting to happen. The only thing these are good for now is mowing the lawn. I add my ingredients off to the side because I don't want to pour oil over that and cause a fire. Make sure you wipe the sides of this off because you do not want any fires. You just want a faint smoke. When it gets a faint smoke, then I adjust the volume till where it just smokes. Once you see a whisper of smoke coming out of there, adjust the temperature to where it just becomes a whisper. It means it's just ready to explode. The bubbling is getting water out of the oil and probably the condensation from the sides of the water from the sides of the bottle. It's becoming golden. The oil is actually clarifying at this point. It's becoming golden, no longer amber. So this is actually pretty clean oil. I just didn't bleach it. There's probably residual water from the cleaning process. know it's getting close because there's just a faint smoke coming out of that. It'll really start smoking here in a few minutes. And turn the volume down just a little bit. Down just a bit. Okay, we've got a good temperature here. I got to increase it slightly to that smoke. Reduced it a little bit too much. I'm going to add the litharge. To be coffee brown. Now, this is the magic. They're still heating up the cooler oil. There, now it's looking like coffee with cream. We want it to look like black coffee. You don't want the litharge to go to rest on the bottom of the flask. Now it's looking like coffee mocha. There, it's starting to turn. It's starting to turn like a caramel color now. There, see it turning black? It's starting to turn black. There, see it's turning black. There we go. I like to get it to nice deep dark black color. It's clear now. That's what you want, is the clarity. I widened the funnel. So that it doesn't plump up too much. Add a few grains. Cook it for wind's really starting to blow. See how black that is now? Cook that gum mastic. I wanted to just start smoking again. Faint smoke. Get a faint smoke, whisper of smoke off the top. Thoroughly cook the ingredients. Make sure that those crystals are all the way dissolved. Now you see how black that is. That's what you want. Now we're going to set it aside, let it cool until it's warm. Turn this off. And I'm going to find a nice safe place to put it so it doesn't blow up on me. So we now have the, it's warm to the touch. I can touch it without burning myself. So now I'm going to add the turpentine. You want to mix this up very well. If I was making this with the Damar, I definitely would strain this, but I have very high grade mastic. Everything else is pure, so I'm not worried about any type of contamination. Now I want to pour this. These are paint tubes. I'm going to pour them. Okay, I ran a few errands for a few hours, and this is set up quite nicely, gelled very nicely. And actually this is the only one that looks like it might be a little full. Okay, there. We have a break. Hey, sweetie. So, try this one. Let's try crimping this. A little bit of it is dripped on the outside. It's a good idea to get that. I'm using these pliers. What do you call these kind of pliers? Canvas pliers. Fold it down once and there. That's a real strong joint. It dripped a little bit on the outside, but that's okay. Sure, one crimp would be fine enough, but I'd like to fold it over and get that one crimp, that extra crimp, and clean this off later with denatured alcohol. You do want to get it. You may want to make sure that these lids are on tight. That was a little loose. Just fold it over once and give it a nice crimp. There, have a nice. One of the reasons why I decided to go with tube is I had a jar of this sitting on this little pallet. I just knocked it over last week. Broke. I'm finally going to go to tubes. Just a little information. I like to keep my beaker clean, my instruments clean, and I use a harsh chemical stripper, this clean strip I guess I get from Home Depot. I fashioned a welding rod. I just take a paper towel and a welding rod and just work this back and forth several times until I get this beaker nice and clean. Then put a aluminum foil over the lid until we do the next batch. This is the way I clean it. I like to keep these things clean. You don't get contaminants in it. Yeah, I used a chemical stripper and then rinsed it out, and the water reacted with the stripper. So I used some pine sol and scrubbed out a lot of got a lot of gunk out, and it seems to be reacting with the water, kind of like a water oil thing. A final note: you should actually be able to clean it with just denatured alcohol. If you cannot clean it with denatured alcohol alone, then try a chemical stripper along with a detergent. I was using denatured alcohol as the final cleanup on this operation.